it going. So if you would please keep yourself muted until we get into some question and answer time, that would be great. And if you have some things that you want to add along the way in chat, feel free to do so. I'll keep my eyes on that as well. Um, if you don't know who we are Next Element. We're a global leadership development company that is based out of Kansas, and we work all over the place, especially now since things are virtually. We go virtually anywhere, which is fantastic. Our main goal is to build cultures of compassionate accountability, as I've mentioned, and we do that in a variety of ways through training, one-on-one coaching, group coaching. We have a certification program and some licensing programs as well of some of our curriculum. And today we're talking a lot about compassion accountability. And I want to let you know before we get started that there are really three ways we approach this idea of compassion in the workplace. One is around compassionate cultures. And this is a curriculum that we use specifically for larger organizations and we use this curriculum is called the compassion mindset. That's for folks who are very interested in giving a large portion of their organization, probably 1,000 members or more, a really good introduction to this concept of the compassion mindset and compassion accountability at the highest level from kind of a broad approach, right? Whereas leading out of drama uses the same DNA, if you will, of compassionate accountability, but goes a lot deeper and might be for more in-depth study and practice within an organization. And that's really helping tease out this idea of what is compassionate conflict. And we also use a behavioral-based communication model called the process communication model, which isn't something we developed. We're distributors of that, to look at this moment-by-moment interactions where we can have compassionate communication. So we approach compassion in the workplace in those three ways. And particularly today, Cindy is going to talk to you a lot about what they've been doing around leading out of drama. So I would like to go ahead and introduce to you Cindy Jensen. She is the Director of People and Culture at CARFAX Canada. She has a fantastic career in learning and development, about 30 plus years working with people and systems and organizations. And I thought I'd put a little fun fact in there for you that you may not know, but she is also a competitive paddler in dragon boat. And maybe she'll mention to you what that is here in a minute. But there's a lot more to her. There's every certification you can think of, she has it. She's a gold mine when it comes to learning and development, and has been a great person to partner with. And I also want to mention that I believe we have on the call today at least one, I think I maybe saw both come in, of the other trainers and facilitators that work with Cindy at CARFAX. So they might be available here to answer some questions if the need be. Before we jump into Cindy's presentation or her ability to talk to us about what they've been doing here, I want to get a sense from you all of what you know. So will you open your chat window if you haven't already and answer this question by just putting in a 1, 2, 3, or 4. What is compassion accountability to you? How much do you know? Is this your first exposure to this concept? Or have you attended our free workshops once or twice or 3 times? Or have you been to one of our formal trainings? I'd love to know that about you. Or are you certified? I mean, maybe you're saying, move over, Aaron, I could teach this. So that's fine too. All right, Michael, welcome. Looks like this is your first exposure. That's great. Megan also. Okay. Keep them coming if you have them. Excellent. Well, it looks like we have at least some minimal familiarity. Compassion accountability, just to bring you up to speed very briefly, is our signature approach to engaging each other in the workplace. And it's where we want to really take compassion as this idea that we're going to struggle with each other with dignity and respect in order to achieve our goals and outcomes. So it's really a nice balance between maintaining healthy relationships at work at the same time as a high level of accountability and responsibility for outcomes. And we may get into a little bit more of that later. If you're interested in more of that, there'll be a way that you can learn more from me, free, no problem. And we'll talk about that at the end. So I want to start out here by turning it over to Cindy. Cindy, welcome, and have her take us through kind of the timeline of how she came to this curriculum and how we met and how it's evolved over time. So Cindy, will you start?
Thanks, Aaron.
Mhm.
Thanks again for inviting me to be here. Hello to everyone from across the world. That's very exciting to see so many different people joining from across different regions. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey for sure. When I first joined CARFAX Canada, we were originally CarProof back in 2017. And I had joined the organization during a time when it had been acquired and the owner had sold the business. There was new leadership in place. Things were evolving from a brand perspective. We were being rebranded to CARFAX Canada. We also had a new president, new senior leadership team. We were still filling positions on the senior leadership team. And we were really shifting from a command and control environment, is my best way to describe that and what that looked like at the time. So I had done some focus groups. I had done some web-based surveys. I had done some interviews with some people to understand a little bit more about what was working and what wasn't working, because I was originally hired in the organization as an L&D professional. So I went into ATD knowing what some of our gaps were and knowing what our president was looking to create from a culture perspective. So our president is very much about open candor, having the right conversations, having difficult conversations, and creating that two-way dialogue in those conversations. So as a practitioner of several different content modalities, models, concepts, I was going into ATD knowing what was working and what wasn't working in my previous organizations, and knowing what the problem was that I was trying to solve in looking at content and looking at experiences and what our business actually needed to evolve. And when I met Aaron and team, one of the things that struck me was not only the model, but I think the motto at the time was changing the world one conversation at a time. And what we really wanted to do in our culture was change our culture one conversation at a time. So it was really about creating the space, creating the safety, giving people the voice, the tools to have those tough conversations, to hold people accountable, to hold each other accountable, and to just have a conversation with one another, because a lot of that wasn't happening. So that's pretty much how that came to be in 2017. I spent some time with Aaron at the booth. We learned about, what the model looked like. The model was also consistent with other content that I was looking at around the drama triangle, around rescuer, persecutor, and victim. So it aligned nicely with other content we were doing. I'm always very focused on layering and making sure that what we're doing isn't standalone, that it attaches to one another and it builds off other things. So this was a nice complement to the strategy. So we started in 2018 with the executive team. So Aaron came to Canada, and we had a very focused approach with the executive team. Aaron met with Mark, who's our president, to get clear on what his outcomes were and what he was looking for as a result of the installation, and how we could make it more than just an event or an activity with the executive team. And we built in virtual sustainment modules with Aaron. So they had their initial install. We got the executive team using the model, using the language and the content. And then Aaron would meet with them. I think we had like monthly virtual sessions, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, there were a few, probably maybe 4 months worth, something like that, 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. And so the whole concept was we needed the executive team to be able to model and practice this before we could ask our next level people managers to do the same, because we wanted everybody speaking the same language and using the same approach. And so that's what that looked like with the executive team. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
feel
that's the
free to.
facilitator in me to pause.
Of course, of course. No, that's great. Please continue. I think it's a great setup to how we were brought in. And then, I would say that the executive team experience was good, and the follow-up was um, good as well. There are always things that we want to tweak along the way, and there was a little bit of turnover and some things like that. So those put kinks in the system, but it was enough of an experience. I would say, I'm curious what your perspective will be, that you all decided to continue on, and I'm curious,
Yeah,
what after that experience, what did you hope to achieve as we pushed forward? Where were you seeing this fit now?
yeah. So we were starting to see our engagement survey results start to shift, right? And start to see where people were feeling more included, more engaged, more involved in decision making, feeling like, they were being invited into the dialogue just through the executive team practicing some of the skill. And to Erin's point, we did have some changeover, and we did have some negative Nellies who weren't always on board. But they slowly started to shift when they started to see the value and how it could work, right?
Mhm.
The key, though, was constantly revisiting, constantly going back into the model, or even saying, even to my president, it sounds like you need to have a conversation, Mark. What's the conversation you need to have? What is it that you're really wanting here? And how can you use LOD to help you? So it really took us being mindful around doing some of that.
So at some point then, there in around 2019, you asked us to go a little further and work for me to work with two groups, but at the same time, you invited yourself and also two others, two that are on the call, Brian and Stefan, to at the same time take part in certification and actually gain a license from us in order to be able to do this internally. So what was
Yeah.
that process like?
So for me, anything that we do, I'm very passionate about developing others and building capacity within, and not being dependent on a vendor, say. So I love Next Element, and I love Aaron, and he's always been a continuous support to us. But it was really important that I had resources within the business who were well versed in this, who could continue to support and coach and enable people as they experienced it and practiced and applied it. So for license and certification, what we did is we took two of our sales leaders who had been through some rigor around facilitation and learning how to facilitate for another initiative that we did. So both Brian and Steph are on this call today. And maybe Brian and Steph, you'd like to speak to what your certification was like.
Would love to hear from
Yeah,
you.
I can start. And thanks, Cindy and Aaron, for setting this up. It's great to see you.
Sure.
So for myself, really I was kind of tapped on the shoulder with the opportunity to participate in this. And it was a great learning opportunity for myself as well. As a newer leader within CARFAX, it provided ample opportunity to continue to grow. And, with the initial session that we did with you, Aaron, for LOD, it was a ton of information. And I think at that point, hadn't actually been told or knew that we were going to be, potentially participating in the certification process. So after we started the certification process, honestly, the experience was phenomenal, and having the ability to continue offering this as a company has been a great experience for myself, and then to actually continue to bring it to new people within the organization has been fantastic as well. And you can see shifts in conversations with people within my team that have taken the program, as well as just in general meetings as well. So all in all, great experience.
Great to hear from
Thanks,
you.
Brian.
Stefan, I wonder if I could direct your comments a little bit. Would you speak to if whatever you want to say about the experience you had, but also what have you been hearing from participants? What has it been like going forward? Have there been any barriers to training, or has this fit in with your overall learning journey? Things like that.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. Thanks for inviting us to this. Nice to see you. It's a beautiful
bet.
beard you got there.
Yes. Thank you.
The experience through certification was a really cool one because it just really allowed us to it gave us the time to really focus on the material. Going through just an LOD session, it was good, but for me there was still practice that needed to be involved. So that certification process really helped implement everything from the program. As far as internally, it has been a very in-demand session. I like to use the word sold out because even though we're not selling anything, but Brian and I put up 3 sessions for 2021 and they were sold out within a couple hours. The sessions we did in 2020 and 2019 were fantastic. The feedback that we get from a lot of our colleagues is, I tried this with a dealer call. For those who don't know, we deal with auto dealers in Canada. I tried this with a dealer call, and the approach completely changed the conversation, and everything ended up great. Or I tried it with my family, and I was able to shift the conversation where it would historically go really negative way. This whole thing that we went through has really taught me to shift the conversation in a different way. So the feedback has been absolutely fantastic.
That's great. Thank you, Stefan. I'm curious if we have any questions from our participants at this point for Cindy, Stefan, Brian, myself. And we're an open book, so happy to talk about any aspect of what it's like to implement. If this is difficult, if it's expensive, how much time does it take, etc. What's on your mind? I have all kinds of questions for backup, so don't. So I am, let's see, someone's asking here in chat, when approaching a difficult conversation, is there a key phrase that you have found to work better than others? Cindy, Brian, Stefan, what's working on the ground for you guys?
These guys are just hot out of the session, so I'm sure that they have some to offer.
I would say it depends. That would be my first answer. It depends on the situation that you're facing. There's not really one phrase that's better than another. It all depends on the context and in the information. If you're having a family conversation, your answer is going to be different than if you're having a colleague conversation. So it's funny because Brian and I we noticed that at the start of the session, the go-to phrase was "I'm concerned." That was the go-to.
Yeah.
And once people started, understanding the cycle and understanding that it's okay to start it open and really say how you feel, people started really personalizing that opening statement. So to answer the question, in my opinion, there's not one opening statement that works better than another.
I agree with you. And I think to nuance that a little bit, what Stefan has revealed is that we do teach, especially in our certification, we kind of hammer this home, is that we provide a framework, if you will. We don't provide the words that you use specifically, but we provide kind of a roadmap for these important and difficult conversations that always start at one spot in general, which he referred to as open or openness. And so our certification process, I feel like, really helps people gain confidence in their ability to be agile within that framework in a particular conversation. So I'm going to get to some people who are asking questions. Aaron, I saw you raised your hand. What does the certification program consist of, and are there different levels to parallel with the leaders in a company? The certification program, I don't mind answering that one, is now, we can now do it all virtually, which we didn't do before. It's virtual certification is, I believe, 8 sessions that are about 3 hours long each. It used to be 4 or 5 full days. So we've pared it down, and it's still quite effective. So that's the sort of the time involvement of that. And I consider that certification to be the highest level for people who want to train within an organization. And we have different depths of curriculum that go along with that certification that trainers can choose depending on who they want to reach within an organization. So yes, there are different levels to parallel with leaders in a company. Hope that answers your question. Keep asking if not. So Kristen's interested in having the same language phrase that was used. How long would you say it took to have your company using keywords defined the same way? It's fascinating and real to me as a former linguistic researcher. Wonderful. What do you guys think, Cindy and Brian?
So I would like to answer this from a same language perspective, Kristen, and it's a great question. So when I'm having a conversation with anyone in the business, and because I deal in employee relations, I have a lot of conversations, right? Because part of my role is also owns part of the HR element, but I also work with a lot of leaders one-on-one, and then working with a lot of employees. So when the conversation surfaces, there's a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of emotion potentially. There's a lot of stuff happening, and it's given me the ability to help the individual pause and slow down, and then say, okay, so what role are you playing right now? And when I refer to the role, those of the individuals that have been through LOD know that there's 3 roles: victim, persecutor, and rescuer. And it pauses them enough to go, And then I can say, okay, so what is it that you want right now? What is it that's really bothering you right now? And what conversation do you need to have with this individual? What's at the root of this conversation? Because you're up here talking about this, but I'm feeling like something else is going on. You're frustrated, you're overwhelmed, you're concerned, you're not feeling valued. What is it? And then let's talk about that, and let's figure out how we can use this to help you have the conversation going forward. So that's one way I've been able to use the language, and I would say the trainers are doing the same thing.
Great, great. So someone's asking about the cost. I was going to type it in here, but I didn't mention the cost. It's a $5,000 certification fee. If you want to, like, CARFAX has a bit of a different situation because they purchased an organizational license from us so that they could teach some things a little bit differently within their organization. So one thing to know is that we're incredibly flexible around how we can mix and match our curriculum and what kind of license or creativity you want to use to fit your specific need. Just Papas, I'm looking for a new job. Ha, great question. Do you see that question, Cindy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I get very curious around that. I certainly have. Actually use this particular tool, our leading out of drama model, the what we call the compassion cycle, to ask a variety of different questions that get at how open people are, what their mindset is around how valuable, capable, or responsible we are as individuals and organizations. And the answers to that really tell me a lot. So that's part of the skill set that I've developed with our curriculum. And I think this tool can help. but general questions, Cindy might be better at this because she interfaces with a lot of people.
I think, Jess, what I would say to you is think about what's most important to you when you're going into these potential prospects with these potential employers. And if you're looking to know how they handle those situations or what their environment looks like, frame your question from the standpoint of, what does this look like in your environment? And try to avoid the word conflict, because I find people have varying degrees of definition around the word conflict even. But I would go in with a question that what's most important to you to know about that environment and how they respond and how they encourage and hold people accountable.
Great answer. Great question here by Aaron about how much do you track analytical data or for continuous or historical feedback to the company, Cindy? I was going to show some analytical data that we have. When people get certified with us, we also give you an outcomes measurement tool that measures the change in self-efficacy. We really focus a lot on people's self-confidence and their ability to achieve outcomes, and we like to measure that pre and post. And so let me go back to that because I was going to skip it. So what we look for here is changes from pre to post are called effect size scores. And if it's 0.25, then it's an educationally significant change. Pretty good training. 50.5 is usually clinically significant, and 0.8 and above is more of a wow factor, very transformational. I can show you that the first cohort I did there had these scores for the context of at work, my team, and at home. All of them happened to be in that wow factor zone. That was a really good session. The next one was a little bit lower, but still in that very significant, clinically significant zone. Just so you all know, over 5 years now of providing this service with this curriculum, this is my overall score for me personally within Next Element. When people of all the programs I have administered, and not including CARFAX's most recent session, which just finished a few days ago, I think. CARFAX, in the context of at work, which is usually the one they measure, the score from their participants is 0.52, which is really good. It's actually a little bit higher than the average trainer that we have around the world, and we have a network of about 100 people. So we collect that data. Cindy, what other things do you collect?
We do post survey feedback as well for each session. And then of course our engagement survey questions. We have questions built into our exit interview data as well. And we do have hello stay interviews where we ask questions around just candid conversations and comfort and ability and tools. So there's lots of ways that we measure success. And it takes time, right? So any kind of activity like this where you're looking for a behavioral change, where you have to give people time and practice and feedback and safety in doing this too, right? I think that's fundamentally important. And because we started with the executive team, and our executive team is very open and knows this and demonstrates this, that people feel safer to be able to have these conversations. And that's really, really important that we started with the executive team.
Yeah, great, thank you. So is there anything else, as we're getting over time here, but I'm curious if there's anything else you think we should know that you'd like to tell me or the participants? Stefan, Brian, you're also open for that as well, and then we'll wrap up. Anything we haven't covered that's crucial?
I think the most important thing for me is realizing this is not a one and done. This is continuous. We do, whenever we do a session, we do a follow-up 3 to 5 months later, and then we'll reach out. I make a point to reach out to individuals, a year after, just to see how they're doing. Because it's very, very important to keep that skill up. because it's very easy to default back to your pre-LOD mindsets. So continuous training refreshers are super, super important.
Thank you. I'm going to take the time to answer this last question here, because this is a very common practice that we experience with other clients as well. That what happens when a key person, especially an executive team member, is not on board with new practices? Oh boy, there's a variety, but I think the one thing I want to speak to, and then maybe Cindy can chime in, is that part of what we are about at Next Element, part of what we're teaching, is that we aren't afraid of conflict. We're not afraid of that difficult conversation, and we try to teach and build the confidence in our practitioners so that we can engage in that disagreement, or try to really get at the root of what is this person having an issue with. And when someone isn't on board, that's okay with us. This isn't for everyone, and we actually use our tools to engage that conversation in what we call a plus way, so that we are staying open, resourceful, and persistent, and able to move forward and not have that be a block. Now, internally, the president, the CEO, the executive team might have an issue with that, and they may make other decisions. But as a vendor, that's how we deal with it. And that happened. That happened in the executive team with CARFAX.
And typically, Kristen, you see a pattern with those individuals where they historically don't buy in, or think that they don't need that because they're good, they know all that already. So you do have to face it head on. Anybody who knows me, I face stuff head on, even pre-LOD. So you have to have those candid conversations, and you have to be prepared to do something about it, right? Because you're trying to influence a change.
And my take on that particular case from a little bit outside was that things didn't really get better. That kind of festered over time, and then eventually at least one of the individuals left.
Yeah.
And that happened. It's sort of, it either happens naturally or someone sees it and makes the courageous decision often to say, sorry, we got to change.
And it happened both ways in our situation.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Well, if you are interested in continuing this conversation with me, I would be delighted. I want to thank Cindy, Stefan, Brian for being on the call. Great information. Thanks to all of you for your fantastic and insightful questions. I'm happy to continue this conversation about compassion, accountability, personal or professional development, if that's what you're interested in, or if it's something for your team, or even for your entire company culture. I will see if I can type this here in to the chat before we're done, so that you can look me up and you can get on my calendar if you'd like. This is a free call. Happy to explore whatever you wish around compassion, accountability. If you lose this or I've typed it in wrong, give me a call. That's my number. I'm happy to set it up for you. Thank you again to Cindy and the folks at CARFAX. Continued success. I know you have 2 more sessions at least this year, and hopefully you keep getting sold out, Stefan. I think it's because of your haircut, Stefan. That's why they sign up so fast. Both you and Brian.
It's not a haircut, it's lack of hair.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Yes, I do have the recording, and I'd be happy to send that out to anybody here who's been in attendance today. So if you want to review it, that will be helpful, I'm sure. Remember that each week we have a free workshop that we provide for leadership development called Compassionate Accountability Leadership Workshop. The next one will be facilitated by my partner, Nate Regier, called Double Your Trust Quotient. By answering these 2 questions, you can go to our website and look for the events and workshops section, and you can sign up for these. They happen every Wednesday. We have many topics and keep developing new ones. So we try to make them actionable within a 30-minute time window, except for days like today when it's almost 40 minutes. So thank you all. I want to honor your time. Cindy and I are going to stay on for a little bit, but everyone else feel free to go about your day. Hope you enjoy it, and we hope to see you back here.